Recently, I had a Zoom call with financial crime investigators from multiple financial institutions, and everyone was just talking about cyber fraud. And basically, each participant, we were all asked to share what's the most common threat or cyber fraud that we were seeing. And many of them said they were seeing recurring incidents of account takeover with their customers. Now, account takeover is when someone other than the account holder gets access to that account, primarily bank accounts and financial accounts. So when it was my turn, I said that we were continuing to see scam victims where remote access software had been used. I also shared with them that it wasn't unusual for us to find that remote access software had been on the victim's computer or smartphone for many months. Then one of the participants said, well, maybe that's the reason why we're seeing multiple incidents of account takeover, and especially with the same customers, because they were unaware that remote access software could remain on somebody's computer or smartphone for a long period of time. They just thought if you thought you had it, you ran antivirus and it disappeared. But that's not the case. So in today's episode, we're going to take a deeper dive into looking into remote access software. Welcome to the Privacy Mentor Podcast, your partner in the fight against identity theft, fraud, and cyber threats. I'm your host, Carrie Kursky. Thanks so much for joining us here again for another episode of Privacy Mentor. I am joined today by Kyle Kursky. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, so remote access software. Where should we begin?
I guess we can go into the explanation of what is remote access software.
Well, remote access software is typically used by IT companies, and it allows them to remotely access your computer or your smartphone so that they can do an evaluation to determine if it's been infected, or maybe your printer's not printing and they can go in and look at the settings and maybe restart something so now you can print from your program or from your computer. So remote access software is a convenient tool that allows a third party who's not within the same space as you are to be able to evaluate your device to see if there are any problems, and also to do some repairs that can be done remotely.
What are some examples of some common software programs that people have heard of?
Yeah, so some of the remote access software programs used are things like AnyDesk or TeamViewer, and there are tons of these programs out there. But when we're working with victims, quite often, AnyDesk and TeamViewer, and there's a third one that I can't think of off the top of my head, but those are the ones that we're commonly seeing. So not only is it being used by the good guys, it's also being used by the bad guys.
And how are they using it?
Well, what the bad guys are doing is it usually starts with a phone call, a text message, or an email. And the conversation will begin by saying either your bank account has been compromised, because they'll pretend to be your bank, and they'll ask you a couple of questions, and they'll say, okay, well, it looks like it's coming from your IP address. Have you had any computer issues? Or we can send you to our tech department, and they can help you, and they can look at the computer and see if maybe your computer has been compromised. Well, if you think it's your bank calling you, you're going to be like, well, yeah, I want you to help me. And what will happen is that tech desk, fake tech desk, they will have you go to a website and download AnyDesk or TeamViewer, one of these other programs, because they're a legitimate website. Have you download the program, and then after you've installed the program or the app, depending on what type of device you're using, then it'll give a code, and you have to give the code to the person who you want to give access to your computer. And now they take over control of the mouse, and they're looking at everything, open thing, closing things, running program, and so on. If it comes through an email, it might be the same thing. Some of them we're seeing where it asks about a significant Amazon purchase, like did you recently try to purchase an Xbox? And if you didn't, give us a call. When you call, it's not Amazon, but then they say, oh, it looks like your Amazon account has been compromised. We're going to transfer you over to the tech department. Same thing. Another version, you might be on your computer and you have a pop-up, and the pop-up says your computer is infected, and it has a phone number for you to call. Some people think that this is a pop-up from their antivirus program. They call the number and proceed to install the remote access software. So that's a couple of different ways of how the criminals are using it. Now, once they get it installed, they can do anything they want because they have access to your entire device from anywhere in the world at any time. It's not unusual where we hear stories of somebody shuts down their computer or everybody goes to sleep at night and they walk away or go to bed and maybe they end up forget something and they come back and they see the mouse is moving around on the screen. And that's because once the bad guys know that you're kind of off the computer or logged out of it or whatever, they fire it back up and they get into it and they can look at everything, access everything, and cause a lot of damage. Speaking of cyber criminals, on this show, our goal is to keep you aware of cyber threats and provide tips on how to protect yourself. But who are these cyber criminals and why do they do what they do? Do they ever get caught? Well, for answers to these questions, check out Modem Mischief podcast. It's a true cybercrime podcast. You hear enough about the true crime stories like John Wayne Gacy and Ted Bundy. This one focuses specifically on true cyber crimes. So you're going to hear stories about notorious hackers, the lives that they impacted with the damage that they've caused. You'll hear more about the dark web and what goes on down there. So if you are like me and you like true crime stories, but you want to hear more about true cybercrime stories, then check out Modem Mischief. I think you're going to love it.
So you said earlier it's not a virus, and if your antivirus won't pick up on it when you run a scan, how are people supposed to find it?
Yeah, so this is the problem that we're finding is that when most people realize that they fell for a phone scam, text message, email, whatever the case might be, the first reaction is to either run a virus scan or to call their IT guy, have them run a virus scan, or hire like the Geek Squad or one of these companies to come in and check their computer. Well, these companies don't know the situation of what happened. You've just told them my computer's been hacked. So they will simply run a virus scan. Remote access software is not a virus. It is a legitimate program that has been installed. So what you have to do is look at the installed programs or apps on your device. You need to go through the list and see what each program is. If there's someone there that you don't recognize, simply do an internet search by the name of that program or app and see what it does. If it says something along the lines of remote access software and you don't remember installing it or downloading it, you didn't intend to do it, or if it's not the one used by your IT person, then uninstall it. If you need help with this, what you could always do is contact your IT professional that you work with. And instead of saying, I've been hacked, can you check my computer? You need to say to them, I believe remote access software was installed on my device. Can you check it for me? So that way they know exactly what to look for. They know to go in and look at the list of programs and help you determine which ones you need and which ones you don't need. Because if you just start randomly deleting programs, you could end up in a lot of trouble because some of those programs are required for your operating system. So when in doubt, get with an IT professional, but just explain to them that you're concerned about remote access software.
So what are some things that you can do to help minimize your risk of becoming a victim of remote access software?
Some of the things that you can do, first, don't install programs or apps from unsolicited calls, emails, or text messages. If you have a pop-up on your computer, tells you to call a phone number, don't call the number. If you think it's your antivirus program, great. Run your antivirus program, or when in doubt, contact your IT professional. But do not respond to these pop-ups unless you've looked at your antivirus program or looked at something else to confirm. You always have to have that confirmation. And if a third party tells you, here, go to this website and install this so I can take a look at your program. And if it's someone that you didn't reach out to and someone that you don't know or trust, don't do it. Another thing you can do to minimize your risk, don't store your passwords in your internet browser. I know it's convenient, but you've heard me say multiple times, privacy versus convenience. In this case, and what's happened with, we did a previous episode about a couple who had lost $500,000 due to this remote access software. Well, they stored their passwords in their internet browser. So when they went to bed at night, the bad guy fired up the computer, went to the websites, and the internet browser automatically filled in the username and password. Made it really easy for the bad guys. So just remember, if it's easy for you, It's easy for the bad guys. Kyle, what are a couple other tips? Do you have some that people might use?
Well, to go along with that, you probably want to not have any browser bookmarks to significant websites that are connected to you. And along with that, you probably want to clear your search history on a regular basis as well.
Yeah, I agree. And especially with the bookmarks, you got to be careful with those because you could be creating a roadmap of all your financial accounts, which makes it real easy for the bad guys. So just stop and think. I mean, how hard is it to type in the URL of your website every time you want to go to log in? And also the thing with bookmarks, if the website changes one of their links, you're going to have a bad broken bookmark. So sometimes it's always better to just type it in, and that way you don't forget, what the web address is. But just use caution when you're doing that. And like you said, Kyle, I think it's a great idea. Clear out the cache and cookies every time you close your internet browser, because all those are just leaving breadcrumbs back to what you use online. Any other tips?
When in doubt, disconnect from the internet.
Exactly. If you think you have been tricked into one of these scams where remote access software has been installed on your computer or on your phone, disconnect it from the internet. If you're plugged in with an Ethernet cable in the back, unplug. If you're on Wi-Fi, go to your Wi-Fi settings and either put your device in airplane mode or just disconnect from your Wi-Fi network. That gives you time to safely scan for any of these remote access programs without having interference from the bad guys. And the reason I bring that one up is when we first started hearing about this remote access software, halfway through the phone call, after the victim had installed the program, he realized it was a scam. So he told the guy, "This is a scam. I'm not going to continue on with this call," and he hung up. Well, he didn't realize what that remote access software had done and that it was still on his computer. So the bad guys logged into the admin login credentials and changed his password and then logged out of the computer. So when the victim went to get back into his laptop and he fired it up and it asked for the password, he put it in, he couldn't get in. The bad guys blocked him out. So the bad guys called him later on and they're like, "Hey, you tried to get into your computer? You couldn't, could you? Because we changed it. So it's going to cost you $3,000 for us to change it back so you can get access to your computer again." This is why, when in doubt, immediately disconnect from the internet. There's an IT professional that we work with. We had him go out to this victim's house, and that's exactly what they did, is that they disconnected from the internet, and they got everything ready to go, and then they reconnected to the internet, which sent a signal to the bad guys telling them that that computer was back online, and the bad guys logged in. As soon as the bad guys logged in, the IT professional turned off the internet and then went back and changed the admin settings to what the victim wanted it to be so they could log back into their computer. And they also removed the remote access software. So disconnect from the internet when in doubt, whenever you think you have a problem. Another thing you can also do is reboot your device, restart your device, because sometimes that will take out any bad programs. Unfortunately, that does not work for remote access software, but when in doubt, if there are other things, you might want to try that too. Kyle, anything else we should add?
No, this is just some scary stuff.
Yeah, it really is. And we're getting calls, I would say, about one a week now, sometimes two a week from people. And we have had someone where they kept saying, I don't understand. How does my bank account keep getting hacked? I don't understand this. I've changed my passwords. And this went on for 6 months. And we traced it back to that remote access software. It had been in the laptop for the entire 6 months. So every time the victim was changing their username and password on the bank account, the bad guys had it and they just accessed it. So watch out for remote access software. It's used for good by legitimate businesses to help you repair and work on and fix computer issues. But it's also used for the bad guys to gain access to your financial accounts and your sensitive information. Well, that's it for today's episode. And remember these steps because your privacy will thank you.